Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Shootaround episode 4. Today, we are going to be going over contenders versus pretenders, just kind of looking at the landscape of the NBA in general, talking about some of the top teams and determining how serious they will be for the playoffs this year. Also, we are finally going to be doing that post-game show, so if you would like to join post-pod episode
Same thing.
after the fact over on our Patreon. So if you would like to join that for $1 a month, you can get access to extra podcasts over there. Those ones will be more like 30-ish minutes, but we're going to be going over the KD files there. I was tempted to make that like basically one of the main topics today, but I'm also going to make my own video on that, so I don't want to spoil that too much. So yeah, if you want to get thoughts for me and Connor on that front, then that will be available. But with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get into it, and I think it only logically makes sense that we start in the Western Conference.
Yeah, we can talk about I was going to say the better conference, but I don't know. The Eastern Conference ain't too bad at this point, to be honest. I feel like there's a lot of flaws out west.
Yeah, I still think the shit teams in the East are worse than the shit teams in the West.
Oh, for sure.
But that's the top. There's actually like some top dogs that I'm like, maybe. But I do want to start in the West because I'm personally very confident that the top 3 seed in the West will probably be the team that wins it all. I think it's either Denver, OKC, or San Antonio. With San Antonio being the pretty clear third team there for me, it kind of is dependent on the extent of Wemby's health, how much he ends up playing. If there's potentiality that he can only play like 35 minutes with regularity, that definitely hinders them, because I think they're a contender when Wemby is on the floor, but I don't think they're very good when he's not. They're better than I expected them to be when he's not on the floor, absolutely, because they had that like win streak. That they had when he was sitting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think when we're talking about a playoff context, I do worry that like if he can only play like 34 minutes, that they're just going to get crushed in those 14 minutes, and that's going to be the difference maker.
Yeah, the Spurs are such an interesting case. So yeah, for reference with the numbers, Wemby on, they're plus 11.3. With him off, they're plus 2.8. So that's a huge swing when Wemby is on or off the court. They still are positive, and it speaks to their depth, like you said. When they were without Wemby for a good period of time, they were able to hold up because of De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle and some of those role players. Like, the Spurs feel very, and I feel like I always tie everything back to the Thunder. They feel very like 2024 Thunder to me, where they feel like they've got a shot, but they don't, for me, I was like, yeah, we can get over the hump. But even I, going into the playoffs, predicted the Thunder to lose in the conference finals to the Denver Nuggets, because it felt like they were like right there, but kind of need a couple more tweaks. And it's like when Shea's off, like we're very Shea dependent at that point. Guys hadn't taken the steps forward that they did the next season and made those additions. That's kind of the way I feel about the Spurs. Like, they don't feel like pretenders to me, but they feel like like you said, clear number 3 in the Western Conference at this point, where I think they're talented enough. There are some holes on the roster, but nobody's really perfect in the NBA in general. But it just feels like the experience, and I'm not an experience guy. Every time experience comes up, I roll my eyes. It makes me so mad.
They were still saying that shit about OKC last year. Like, even after they were a 64-win team that had a solid second-round exit, it was like, that's enough. Like, I think talent can supersede that experience. I think experience is far more important when we're talking about two teams that are pretty even in the talent department. Like, when it's close, then I think experience is important to bring up. When it's not really that close, I don't think it matters that much. Like, there will be teams that are just like way better than another team in every way on paper, but they have more experience, so people will say that team's going to win just on experience alone. I do think it is an overrated factor, so we're in agreement on that. Yet again, not a contentious podcast, just agreeing with each other back and forth.
I thought at one point, didn't you say I think you said that you thought the Spurs were the biggest threat to the Thunder in terms of like a matchup by matchup basis. Do you still think that? Because to me, I think it's pretty clearly Thunder 1A, then like Nuggets 1B, or Thunder 1, Nuggets 2. Like, I think we were in agreement that the Spurs are like number 3 in the West, but I think, to me, I still think Denver is the scary matchup for the Thunder.
This is an instance where I will bring up experience. Exactly that. Like Denver is like, yeah, I will. And it's specifically the experience of the superstar. I don't know what Wemby in the playoffs looks like. I do know what Jokic in the playoffs looks like, and it's fucking devastating. So, like,
it's crazy.
Also with Jamal Murray being on the shit that he's on, if that translates to the playoffs, which I feel like it should, then he's going to be a bigger threat than he was to OKC last year. Aaron Gordon's better. The depth is significantly better. So I definitely still think Denver is the bigger threat to OKC. But what I think I said last time was matchup-wise. The Spurs, their matchup is so good against OKC that it kind of bridges the gap for the overall talent. OKC is much better, and Denver is better. But I think Denver doesn't match up and check as many boxes as San Antonio does. I just think the boxes that they do check, they check better, if that makes sense. Like, I think the guard play for San Antonio, 3-point shooting is obviously a concern, but it can be for OKC as well. We'll see how much Jared McCain ends up playing for that team, because that can definitely balance things out a little bit. I do wonder how much they care about defense, the extent to which he will get in the games. Not that he's terrible, but he's not OKC guard defender. So basically my thinking, and I think I said this last time, I think when Wemby is on the floor, they're just as good as OKC. Like, equal footing when Wemby is on the floor, because he is such a difference maker defensively, and he is such a matchup issue offensively. Because, that small guard, that Caruso, or not small but not tall, wide ass Lou Dort like decision, like throwing him on Wemby.
Crazy physical description for my guy.
He's very wide. There's no better way of describing it.
I just didn't expect you to use wide.
I don't mean wide as in fat. I mean his shoulders are out here.
Broad.
broad is
Okay.
better.
We'll go with that.
Yeah. I don't think that works as well because he can just shoot over the top. I feel like Wemby's mid-range game has gotten better as the season has gone along. He's been going to his mid-range bag more and more, hit that filthy one over Kevin Durant in the All-Star game. So like OKC's lack of taller wing defenders makes that tricky. Chet like theoretically matches up really well with Wemby, but when they actually have... not a little underwhelming for what I think he could do. So basically what I think is OKC San Antonio can be just as good as OKC when Wemby is on the floor, but not when Wemby is not on the floor. I think OKC is a much better team without Shea, even if they have their own issues in that department as well. However, basically if I was Mitch Johnson, I would be like, if I see Shea walk up to the scores table, Wemby is coming out. I am going to do everything in my power rotation-wise to make sure Wemby is always on the floor when Shea is on the floor, so that when it comes to the bench units, when they're those 14-ish minutes or whatever it might be, when Wemby is not on the floor, that it just becomes OKC without Shea versus the Spurs without Wemby. And I think that can equalize enough. I do give the Thunder a slight edge in that department. Even if I think the Spurs are maybe a little better offensively without Wemby, they're much worse defensively than OKC is without Shea. But basically what I'm getting at, Wemby's so fucking good at impacting the game that it makes up for the fact that OKC is the deeper team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think, how far the Spurs go, a lot of it depends on those non-Wemby minutes, but also what does Wemby look like as that one option in the playoffs when there was a lot of pressure sent his way. The Thunder had the most success against the Spurs, and teams typically do when they play physical with Wemby, and that's that last matchup where the Thunder won. They were really physical. Well, the last matchup when the Thunder had guys out there and it wasn't, Kenrich Williams going berserk with everybody else sitting out. They were being really physical against Wemby, like knocking him, and those smaller guards, they're being handsy, the way that the Thunder typically play. And in the playoffs, obviously physicality is a big element. So how does Wemby handle that? And I mean, he's so good. He feels like someone that should obviously be a playoff riser, and that's what I'm expecting. But it wouldn't shock me if his first run is, not that great.
At least
that's
some
way it goes
edges.
for a lot of all-time
At least
greats.
some rough edges
Yeah,
that
like,
are enough to make the difference.
yeah, he's nowhere near a perfect offensive player. Wemby's very clearly going to get a lot better offensively, and I think that could be something that sinks him a little bit. Plus, some turnover issues with those young guards with Castle and Harper at times. De'Aaron Fox has kind of slipped a little bit in his efficiency. All this to say, like, I still think the Spurs are capable of getting to the finals and winning it, especially when you consider the injuries to OKC and Denver as well that continue to linger. Like Aaron Gordon with another hamstring, Peyton Watson's out with a hamstring right now. For the Thunder, J-Dub has looked a little bit better with the wrist, but now he's dealing with hamstring stuff, and Shea's out at the moment, and AJ Mitchell. Like, those two teams have been so battered and beat up a lot of the season. San Antonio, they have been, outside of missing Wemby for a decent bit of time, have been relatively healthy compared to some of the competition. And if that carries over into the playoffs, then especially they're in a spot where they can, make that type of run. And maybe Wemby is in his first finals as soon as this year. So yeah, the Spurs are one of those teams that feels like, I know you mentioned how you have your tiers of contenders. I think the top two contenders overall in the NBA are the Thunder and the Nuggets.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
And then I
there.
think like the Spurs are right there on
they're
that
the top of B.
that next tier.
Yeah, they're the top.
Yeah.
I think they could have an argument for A, but there's just that too much unknown with the team to like be confident enough to say that explicitly.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we got to the playoffs and we're like, oh yeah, this team's very fucking serious.
Yeah.
I don't want to OKC podcast this too much, but I'm curious your thoughts. Do you feel better going into these playoffs than you did last year? Because on one hand, Jared McCain is there. That's a nice addition. AJ Mitchell bringing that ball handling, and he can play big minutes now. That's really nice. At the same time, though, there have been so many injuries that I'm afraid that they could just be trying to like cobble together their chemistry really late in the season or even going into the playoffs. And that could hurt them. I think the benefit is they shouldn't really have any issue with whoever their first round matchup is. Nothing crazy anyways. However, they would have to really figure their chemistry out and like get back to the team that they are at their best before. Like if they had some struggles going into a Denver series especially, and even potentially going into a Spurs series, then I'm feeling weird about it. But at the same time, I do think they're more talented when the roster is healthy.
Yeah, this team's better this year when everybody's out there. The question is everybody going to be out there? And I want to continue to believe yes, but there's always the unknown. I mean, that's been a big factor as to why we haven't seen a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors. They went back-to-back, and then KD tore his Achilles even. The Celtics last year, it seemed like they were likely to lose to the Knicks anyways, but still you get Jason Tatum tearing his Achilles, and they dealt with a lot of injuries to pieces like Porzingis, of course, missing a lot of time. That was more so illness-related, but like last year, they were pretty beat up. It kind of happens to every NBA champion. It feels like they go through so much wear and tear winning it all, especially, the Thunder going to a game 7. We're seeing the Pacers suffer a lot of that too, that wear and tear on guys' bodies. It's part of why people have been calling to shorten the season. And the Thunder are kind of going through it right now. They've been able to maintain the best record in the Western Conference, but like the Pistons now, in terms of winning percentage, have the best record in the NBA, which is insane to say out loud.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, they've got a 75-5.
Yeah. Damn.
Like
You're talking about this team winning 74 games.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it goes. They start off 24-1, 25-1. I think it was 24-1, and then lost to the Spurs. And it really just kind of since that, the team has come crumbling down with all the injuries. And I think ultimately the weight of all that and expanded roles for guys just hasn't worked out the same way that it does. Because you can get away for a bit with like, Thunder were missing Jalen Williams and went 24-1. And everybody's like, oh, are the Thunder better without Jalen Williams? But then you see that role players kind of come back down to earth after a certain period of time when you need those stars to lean on. And it just kind of crumbled. And then J-Dub really wasn't himself for a little bit. He started to look like himself, hurt the hamstring. It's been a brutal season, but it's not only like the Thunder, like the Nuggets have been going through it too. And it feels like, those are two of the teams that have played some of the most basketball over the last couple of years. I feel like you kind of start to see that wear and tear a lot. So long story short, I feel better going into the playoffs if we're healthy. Right now, I believe that we will be, because I don't think these injuries, maybe Dub's hamstring, we'll have to wait and see. Those injuries are always tricky. But the other stuff feels pretty much like, okay, we're just being very cautious in the regular season. When we get to the playoffs, those guys will be fine. But the big key is J-Dub.
Yeah.
If J-Dub is J-Dub, I feel very comfortable and confident.
Let's say Dub is, he comes back for like the last couple of weeks. I don't know exactly what his timeline is, but let's just say he's there for like 2 weeks before the season ends and he looks kind of rough. Do you feel worse officially at that point going into the playoffs than you did last year?
Honestly, probably about the same level of confidence. Like last year I was like very,
you'll have more to make up for that than you did before. That was more devastating in the past than it would be now. And there's
having gotten it done. Also, the fact that they do have some of the experience now. Again, I'm not an experienced guy. I hate when people use that as their excuse. But the fact is that the Thunder being so talented and also now having the experience. Plus, we saw Shea can get it done the way that he did all throughout the playoffs last year. And I think just the team in general is more talented. I think the addition of AJ Mitchell, being healthy for the playoff run now and him being way better this season would make me feel better ultimately, even if Dub isn't quite J-Dub. Like, he had some ups and downs in the playoffs last year, and the Thunder still got the job done. And AJ feels like someone whose game very much fits into that similar mold where if Dub's struggling, AJ can step up.
Yeah. One last thing about OKC. I have said that if they don't win this year, I do think they will and should strongly consider trading J-Dub. Because because Chet is so much better when J-Dub is not there. He plays entirely different. There's a whole different energy when that happens. And there's a part of me that's just like, just make Chet the second option and then just get like a lights out shooter out there. I think J-Dub is very talented, but there is an argument to be made that he's not really the best wing for this team specifically. I think if you gave J-Dub his own team, he would be like a Jaylen Brown caliber of player, like genuinely like edging on top 15 and like good enough to bring a solid team to the playoffs. But being that guy doesn't necessarily make you the best second and sometimes third option all the time. It would depend, obviously, in the manner in which they lose as well. But I think there is a real chance that that is at the very least in the discourse, because, if you win a championship, bring that core back, obviously. But once you have tasted that defeat, then it becomes more on the table than it was.
Yeah, so we can disagree. I don't agree. I don't think trading Dub makes much sense. It would, you would have to kind of bring up like names for me to even consider the possibility of that. But to me, J-Dub is not only important as like the second option. As much as I love Chet, he's not quite there yet. There is a lot of shakiness when it comes to the ball handling with him. He turns it over. He's not really the consistent, productive second option.
It seems like he's there when Dub isn't, is the thing. It seems like he's ready. He is there sometimes, but I still think there needs to be a bit more polish to his game before you can comfortably make him a second option. Because the thing is, right now, one of the Thunder's issues is like ball handling, and Dub's not this like elite downhill ball handler. Like, he's a great creator and he's great when you give him a little bit of space, and he can get by guys and finish at the rim. Like, he's really good, about his
but he's not your typical.
That's the problem. Everything inside the arc is good.
Well, that's the thing too. Is the 3-point shot would be a nice counter and would make it a little bit easier for him to get downhill. And he had really good 3-point shooting towards the beginning of his career. And last season, he was down for the beginning of the year. By the end of the season, he kind of turned it around a little bit. But then in the playoffs with the wrist thing, I don't know. I just need to see a longer period of time with him post wrist surgery to see if he's able to get back to that level. Because I don't believe that he's just a bad shooter. And I mean, that game against the Suns, it was only one game, you can't read too much into it. But prior to that game, he said that it's the best his wrist has felt in like a lot. Like, he feels like actually kind of normal going into that game. And then he was 10 for 10 before he ended up tweaking the hamstring and hitting a couple of pull-up threes. Like, to me, it looked the most comfortable his 3-point shot has looked in quite some time. Of course, again, it's a 1-game sample size. We can't go too far into a 1-game sample size, but I do believe that there's still that jumper there. And also, I think the underrated part, too, is how much he contributes to this defense. The Thunder defense has slipped a lot in his absence at times.
Yeah.
And he is one of the most versatile and impactful wing defenders in general in the sport. The versatility is insane. He's someone who got a lot of reps on Wemby in that game that we won. And I think that was a difference maker because he's wide, if you want to use that. He's like sturdy. He just
Long
gets his
arms.
hands in places, has a crazy wingspan. Yeah, like a 57-foot wingspan. So I think his importance to this team's defense is just as valuable as what he does offensively too. And Chet is one of the best defenders in the world, but he's not that same type of like wing defender. And to find a guy that can replicate both the on-ball stuff and the defense that Dub brings, I just don't think you're going to find that out there for somebody that you could trade for.
Yeah. No, I 100% understand that perspective. Like I said, it depends on the context in which the loss comes. Like if part of it is because J-Dub is like a problem, then problem with that is that you'd also be selling low on him, but whatever. We got to stop the OKC talk though. This is contenders versus pretenders. We are in agreement that the top three in the West are contenders. I think after that, the conversation gets interesting because Houston is kind of in shambles right now. How much this DM controversy will end up mattering, we'll have to see. The Lakers, don't think it's happening this year. Defense is too bad. The Timberwolves, Io looks so good in Minnesota. He looks so good. And I said the other day, I think the last episode, that like Minnesota, and I got some pushback from this, Minnesota, I felt was like on the edge of B tier contender or not. Not that I didn't think it was possible that Minnesota could go to the conference finals again and still be a really good playoff team. But the last two times they got there, as soon as they got there, it became very evident that they didn't have enough. So that was not me suggesting the Timberwolves stink, just rather that they still need to be better to actually get further than just the conference finals. And I think Io is a very good piece to achieve that.
Yeah, and people always, like, if you say a team's not a contender or you call them a pretender, people automatically assume, oh, you think my team sucks. One team can win a championship every year. And there's like certain things that pretty much every championship team hits. Everybody talks about the 40 before 20 thing, but it's like, stuff like that and like certain net ratings and like there's all this type of stuff. The Wolves to me are a pretender. I do think they could make the conference finals. Right now they'd be set up to play the Nuggets, who they just kind of have the number of sometimes. And then San Antonio doesn't really have, again, like we talked about, all that experience. The Wolves have been to back-to-back conference finals. Like, there is a world where the Wolves make it there again, but like you said, both times they've gotten there, they've been completely outclassed by the Mavericks and then the Thunder last year. They lose game one in pretty decent fashion. Game two, they get annihilated. Game three, they fight back and blow out the Thunder. Game four is that really close one that could kind of swing the series. They lose, and then game five, they get annihilated again. Like, it's very similar to the way it went with the Mavericks, where they played some close games, but in the end, they just were clearly not as good. And the big thing for them is the consistency. They have some of the highest highs out of any team in the NBA. Ant's going crazy, Randall's being productive, Gobert locking down the paint, the role players are hitting threes, and it's like, can Minnesota win the championship this year? And then there are nights where I'm like, do they belong on an NBA basketball court? They just completely fall apart. And part of my belief in that is I don't think Chris Finch is a very good coach. It's not all coaching, but I'm not a big Chris Finch fan. I also think there are limitations when Julius Randle's your second option. Not that Randle's a bad player. He's a very good player, and I want to give him a lot of credit for the way he's molded his game to Minnesota and grown over time. But there are limitations just because, especially, again, you get into a series against like the Thunder or the Spurs, like you get into a series with these really good defensive teams, especially. Randle's not someone who handles ball pressure very well. He's turnover prone. He makes mistakes. The whole team is very mistake prone. And in this type of Western Conference, to win an NBA Finals, you have to be so clear of mistakes, or you have to play so unbelievably good basketball that the mistakes don't matter. The Wolves are capable of doing that some nights, maybe even a majority of nights, but there are so many nights where it's like, what is this team doing? And you have like two of those games in a series against a much better team, and it's just over for you. And that's the thing. I think Ant is plenty good enough to be the one option on a championship team. Like, I've got no question about that anymore. But sure, adding Io helps. I do think Io is a nice stabilizing piece, but what am I going to get on a nightly basis from Randall's or second option or from Jaden McDaniels? There are some nights where he goes really cold. I still think, Io's not that much of a playmaker. I worry about the playmaking with this team. And Gobert, I think, continues to get underrated, especially when you talk about his impact overall as that defender. But yeah, offensively, he doesn't
He's
really
been
do much
better
for
this
you.
year. I think he's been substantially better this year. How that translates to the playoffs, we'll see. But
yeah, he's just. I've always defended Gobert when it comes to the impact of his game. Like, he is still one of the most impactful defenders in the sport, but there are limitations,
sure.
when you have a big who kind of has brick hands a lot of nights. And yeah, Minnesota's a pretender to me, which is crazy because, again, I think they could make the conference finals. They just have not shown me anything to believe they're going to be consistent enough to win if they get there. And I do think the Spurs and the Nuggets are definitely better teams at this moment. The only advantage over the Spurs is, again, that experience thing. And I do think, while sure, they've had the Nuggets number at times, if this Nuggets team is healthy, they're just better.
The only reason I think they had the number in the past was the depth difference. The thing that matters, the thing that makes the Timberwolves have that like factor that you mentioned of like sometimes they look like a contender and sometimes they look like they don't even belong on the court, it's because this is kind of like a patchwork of talent that isn't strictly like fit first. Now, it's not to a degree that it ends up being detrimental to like the prospect of being a good team, because obviously they're a good team. But I do think it is that ends up capping their ceiling a little bit, because like their front court, I don't like the fit Jaden McDaniels next to Julius Randle. I don't like the fit of Julius Randle next to Rudy Gobert. I don't like the fit of Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. Like, all three of those guys, I just do not think are super ideal collectively. They are obviously all very talented players, not trying to deny that in any capacity, but fit is very important in the NBA. And a lot of the time, especially when they were at their worst, and even now during the regular season when they're at their worst, Randall is kind of whatever and McDaniels is kind of whatever, and they're kind of just stepping on each other's toes, and they're not hitting their catch and shoots. And then what ends up happening is Anthony Edwards just kind of hero balls, and he's solid enough at that it can keep them competitive in some instances, but it's not a winning formula, at the very least not at the highest level. And I have felt for a minute now that one of those three needs to be somebody else. And Rudy Gobert, the issue is his defense is so damn good and so important for this team that I think if he's gone, they just get substantially worse. Even if the offense gets better, the trade-off ain't worth it. Julius Randle is way more developed as a creator and a playmaker than Jaden McDaniels, but at the same time, I think McDaniels has a higher offensive ceiling that he has not achieved because of Julius Randle. So there's a part of me that's like, if you traded Randle for a shooter, Jaden McDaniels gets a little bit more touches offensively, even if I would not want him to be my second option. I think he could be good enough to get close enough to Randall's production, while a wing shooter makes the offense overall better. And if anything, the defense could get better in that equation because Randall's pretty so-so on that end. Basically, one of those three guys, I think they just need to change out. Whoever that might be, I would pick Julius Randle because I wouldn't go with Gobert because of the defense, and McDaniel still has a lot of upside, and he's young and all of that. And then the defense is also way better with him than Randle. But I will still put them in the B tier contender. I do think that iOS addition matters a lot to me. They actually have enough depth to go like 6 players deep. Said that backwards on purpose. That's
good awareness right there.
I think the IO addition to me teeters them over that edge, because as I mentioned with that patchwork element of the team, the unideal fit, what I said in the last episode about the IO edition is IO is a perfect glue guy. He is a perfect connective piece, and I think that he will make that whole core work a little bit more effectively than it did before.
Yeah, I mean, he's played really well into that like we kind of thought when he was traded there a little bit into that Nickeil Alexander-Walker role that they've been missing this year, where he's a connector, he knocks down shots, he defends, he playmakes a little bit. Like, he does a little bit of everything. Every team needs that, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of everything, dirty work type of guy, and
Yeah.
Io fits that mold perfectly for the Wolves. And, you knew how good he was in Chicago as someone who watches the Bulls. Like, with us being in the weeds, we knew how good Io was, but a lot of the world is going to start to realize how good he is. The question is he enough of a stabilizing force to help them kind of get over the hump? And I'm very interested to see how this team looks in the playoffs. I mean, we really have no idea what the matchups are going to look like, because there's a world where the Wolves end up as the 6th seed. There's also a world where they end up as the 3 seed. They're only 1.5 back of the Nuggets. Thunder and Spurs seem pretty clearly like they're going to be 1 and 2. The question is, where is everybody else? I would imagine the Nuggets are probably the 3, but with the health, you never really know. But it could really just be very matchup dependent. I think that's a lot of what this West is, where, if a team that you have a bad matchup against just gets eliminated earlier, then you can make a bit of a run. It's kind of how I feel about the Rockets, where I think there's just too much going on for anybody to consider them contenders at this point. With the Fred VanVleet injury, of course, that was already a big blow. And now Steven Adams out for the entirety of the year. That really hurts them with that bully ball, like offensive rebounding identity. Şengün's efficiency has been really rough. That's not improved. Amin hasn't really taken that leap that people were hoping he would take. He's been a lot better as of late, but he's still not a threat from the outside. And now the Kevin Durant files are dropping, where, he's just talking trash about his teammates in Twitter DMs, and he was asked about it, and he didn't deny it. He just is like, I'm not talking about Twitter drama. And even like at the deadline, Raphael Stone was asked about them not making a move, and he's like, I had to ask myself, a rhetorical question of like, what if this isn't our year? And when your GM is saying that, like, I think it's pretty clearly not your year. They just are not dynamic enough offensively. The defense can wane a little bit. They're really bad in clutch time. And, I do think there's a world where they get good matchups. 4-5 versus the Lakers would be what they get right now. I think they could win that series against Los Angeles, whose defense is just non-existent for the most part. But then, they run into the Thunder, probably not going to go their way. Against San Antonio, like, maybe there's a world, not that the Rockets really have experience like that, but slightly more than the Spurs do at this point, with Kevin Durant there as your top option. But again, you talk about they lose the size of Steven Adams, so I think would be big against Victor Wembanyama. Like, I think there's a world where if matchups go perfectly, the Rockets can make a conference finals run. But at the same time, I think there's just way too much going on here for that to happen. I think they're very likely a first or second round exit, which is not a great first season for a team that traded for a 37-year-old Kevin Durant. But sometimes it just doesn't really go your way, and sometimes your star player just is talking trash about people in Twitter DMs with random fans.
Yeah, no, things were already looking kind of rough before that happened. And now I'm just like, man, I feel like there is minimal possibility that does not affect the team's chemistry. Like, it's one thing for, like, I don't know. It's some of the shit he was saying was crazy. We'll talk about that after the fact. He was comparing Devin Booker to fucking Stalin. But yeah.
Triple double cocaine bear for my guy Russell Westbrook. Like, that was kind of an insane, nickname. Kind of fire.
Kevin Durant, say what you will about him, funny guy. But yeah, I think we're in agreement. I don't have Houston there. I had high hopes for Houston entering this season. I actually, going into the year, predicted that they would be that third team after OKC and Denver, but they did not live up to that at all. But yeah, so we can firmly say Houston, no. I think we're in agreement. Lakers, their offense or their defense is just not good enough. Minnesota, we're split on that one. I'm saying yes. You are saying no. Phoenix is very fun this year. Shout out to Phoenix for being a solid team, but let's get real. And then obviously the Warriors not. So that finishes us with the West. Basically, top 3 seed, true contenders. Minnesota has a chance to be a contender, and then basically everybody else is solid but not good enough. So that moves us on to the Eastern Conference. And what's interesting to me about the East is a lot of these top teams, even though these top teams are better than a lot of East top teams in the past, at the same time, they have a lot of flaws. There are a lot of major holes in all of these teams that make me wonder what they look like in a playoff setting. Boston is the most interesting right now because it's looking like Tatum's going to come back. I feel like he wouldn't have hinted at him coming back this many times over and over again if he had not been told that it was something that he could genuinely do. I still am kind of 50 on
Mhm.
50 on if that's a good idea or not, but he's privy to information about his own Achilles that I am not. So we'll have to see there. But it seems likely that will happen. And I do think if you're getting like 80% Tatum, they're probably the best team in the East. We talked about this last time. If the Cavs were possibly the best team in the East, for me, they are my second choice after Boston with Tatum. But I would not have categorized Boston. I would not and will not, if he doesn't play, categorize Boston as a contender in the East without Jason Tatum, because though they have been way better and more impressive than they really have any right to be, at the same time, I just don't think there is enough offense outside of Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown's shot making in the mid range this year has been bonkers. Has a very high arcing shot as well. Was hitting some really big ones in the All-Star game. However, your second best scorer is either Derek White or Peyton Pritchard, and that's just not ideal at all. And I do wonder how much you can play Peyton Pritchard in a playoff setting. Obviously, he's played in to some extent, played somewhat of a role in 2024, maybe even a slightly larger one in 2025, but like they still limited his minutes because of his size. Incredibly good offensive player for his size, but there is a lot of limitations there that are concerning. And I've also said that the Vucevic deal was one that makes sense with Tatum returning, but doesn't make sense if he's not. And I think I like that addition a lot. So basically, Tatum's probably returning. And if he does, and he looks solid, not peak, but still solid, then they're my favorite in the East and definitely contenders. But I think whether or not they are contenders or pretenders is entirely predicated on Jason Tatum.
Yeah, both with
Right.
him returning and also what he looks like when he does return. Like you said, if they can get about an 85% Jason Tatum, then I feel like they have a strong case to be the best team in the Eastern Conference. It's crazy that they have been the second best offense in the NBA, even without JT. It's a credit to their shooters and the fact that they're able to limit turnovers. Joe Mazzulla, to me, he's my coach of the year. Like, I know the Pistons are doing insane stuff, and if they do end up with like the best winning percentage in the NBA, then it probably will go to JB Bickerstaff very, very deservingly if he gets it. But just what the Celtics have been able to do without Jason Tatum, and Porzingis is gone, and Horford's gone, and Drew Holiday's gone, they've still been like this good with JB as the first option, who's been awesome, but is waned a little bit as of late, and they're still 7-3 in their last 10. Like, it's crazy the fact that they're this good. And so you get Jason Tatum back, who, in my opinion, is, when he's healthy, a borderline, like right there, top 5 player in the world. Probably if he's like 85%, we kind of fall down a little bit more to like that, I don't know, like 15 to 20-ish, 25-ish range. I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to look like if Tatum is like 85% of Tatum, because it's hard to picture that. But Tatum's one of those guys that is such a difference maker, not only as an extra offensive option, but also defensively. Tatum's really good. What is his mobility going to look like as kind of one of those connective defenders? Because I do worry about them, trying to guard like a Knicks, for example. Last year, they kind of got fried at times by the Knicks, especially in fourth quarters. No longer having Drew Holiday, no longer having, Horford and Porzingis, guys that are impact players. Not that Porzingis played all that much, in the playoffs last year, but missing those guys. And if Tatum isn't himself as like that kind of connective wing defender, things can get a little bit hairy. Also against the Cavaliers, who I think with James Harden just have a higher offensive ceiling right now, as well as a higher floor. The Pistons are not that great of an offensive team. Like, they're not bad, but that's my big concern with them is, what is that offense going to look like? Is the 3-point shooting enough? And I do think there's a world where the Celtics could take advantage of that, because they're so good offensively that they might be able to overcome the elite defense of the Pistons. They're such an interesting team. The East as a whole is so interesting to me. West feels very like cookie cutter boring in a way, where it's like, oh yeah, these top 3 teams are contenders, and then like maybe the Wolves, but it's kind of like, the best teams are the best teams. You could tell me that the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, like any of them win the Eastern Conference, and I'm not really that shocked. But also it's like, what are their chances against one of those top teams out West? And if I feel like almost any of these teams are going to be in a huge uphill battle in that series, how confident can I be calling them contenders? I do agree with you, Celtics. If Tatum comes back, looks like himself, contender. If not, they're a pretender. And like that's I don't know with this whole Eastern Conference. Like the Pistons, I know you've talked about them a lot. They're one of your favorites. I love this Pistons team. And again, I hate to keep bringing up the Thunder, but it also feels like a 2024 Thunder situation where they've got this top player in Cade who's taking the next step. He's an all NBA guy, probably going to be all NBA first team. People are giving him MVP shouts, but he's not that efficient of a top option. And right now, Jalen Duren is their secondary guy. Love Duren, but he's not your typical number 2 in a playoff setting. They don't have a lot of guys to break you down off the dribble. I worry they're going to get stagnant, and in 9 Cade minutes, things can fall apart. Defensively, they might have enough to just level out and maintain in this East, but I think they're going to go through some real dry spells, especially if they play good defenses.
Okay, yeah, the Pistons are definitely interesting. I think they're too good to not label as a contender for sure, but there are also concerns.
Yeah.
Jalen Duren being your second All-Star, he's obviously very good, but in terms of the shot creation department, you're kind of in a weird spot there. Don't love Tobias Harris as basically being that guy and that it's really just like kind of a by committee thing who the second option is a lot of the time in terms of perimeter creation. Karis LeVert's kind of been a disaster there. I like Duncan Robinson shooting, but this is a defensive identity team and he's kind of a weak link that could get targeted a lot to make that defense not as effective. Asar Thompson, man, the Thompson twins, it's like how far can talent beyond 3-point shooting or any real shooting take you? Asar has it even worse because he's not as good as Ahmed. Yeah. But defensively, they're going to be great. They're the best defense in the East, I think, for sure. That the offense, I think, could get shaky, but I also think their defense, and I would even go as far as to say their defense is much better than the Celtics, Knicks, and Cavs. I would maybe not put it past the Celtics to be in a similar footing with Tatum there because Tatum is such an effective defensive weapon with his versatility and size on the wings. But I do think they have a significant edge on that end. But at the same time, I think at the least the Knicks and the Cavaliers have a significant edge on the offensive end of the floor.
And that's... The Cavs, to me, are the wild card. I picked them to win the East before the season. They were kind of disappointing, and now they've, turned themselves around. I agree with you, by the way. I think the Pistons are too good to not label contenders, but there are definitely concerns, like there are with pretty much every East top team. But when we talk about the Cavaliers, what we've seen so far, it's only been, a couple of games, but from the James Harden Cavs, the offense looks awesome. The question is defensively, what do they bring to the table on a nightly basis? And I think a lot of that will be shown when Evan Mobley returns, which he's supposed to be back, I believe, pretty quickly here following the All-Star break. I think he might be available for the first game back, if I remember the timetable correctly. So, Mobley's one of the best defenders in the world, and him and Allen out there alongside Mitchell and Harden, I think could be effective enough, especially if the offense is as dynamic as it's looked to go ahead and start off, especially because, Harden and Mobley is a dynamic duo that I think we'll see get unlocked over time. I'm really excited about this Cavaliers team. I feel like I need to see more to say 100% they're contenders, but just off of what I've seen so far and my on-paper expectations, I think they're probably a contender, definitely to win the Eastern Conference. The Harden playoff struggles are always something you have to worry about a little bit, but it's not like Darius Garland was a world beater in the playoffs himself.
No, he was. And with this last year, he was a problem. His offense wasn't good enough, and his defense was terrible, and he was getting targeted constantly. So and it was because of injury. It was because of injury, to be clear. But an injured Darius Garland is definitely worse than a healthy James Harden. Even if James Harden might shoot 30% in a Game 7, he'll get you to a Game 7 at the bare minimum in a way Garland wouldn't.
Yeah, if you're the Cavs just trying to avoid Game 7s in general, you get that done early on.
In every series in 6 games or less, otherwise it's Jover.
Yeah, so the Cavs are... I think I'll probably say the Cavs are contenders if I'm projecting. It's so hard because we haven't seen a lot of it, but just projecting on paper how I feel about this team, I think they're contenders from in this East.
Yeah, I have no doubt about Cleveland personally. At least them having the capacity to be a contender, I have no concern there. putting together a team in this context, it's long been said, but it's still true that like trading for a player who has such a big sway on the impact of the team in the mid-season, not having a what the hell is the training camp going into the year, having to develop that chemistry kind of on the fly, only having like 20 something games to do that. That it could be that they come back a lot stronger next year. Defensively, I think Cleveland, I said this last time, sorry for repeating so many points from the last podcast, but it's relevant just because the trade deadline just happened and it affects the contending class and all of that. But like, they're better defensively than they were before. I have no doubt about that. James Harden's not someone you can bully the way that Garland was. And Jalen Tyson is a much better defensive player than DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus. Like they're very clearly, I think, a better defense because Harden has the size at the point guard position. Tyson's a good perimeter defender. Evan Mobley's one of the best defenders in the NBA. Jared Allen is a good defender. Obviously, you still have Sam Merrill, who's a big part of that rotation, who can be a little bit of an issue. Donovan Mitchell, I think, isn't as bad of an issue as he could be with his height because he is also so broad and very hard to move. He's very strong. But like there is an absence of a mismatch targeting that you could do before. And they got Keon Ellis on the bench. Like I think Cleveland absolutely got better defensively at this trade deadline. So I don't really have concerns in that area. Do I think they're a great defense? No. Do I think that they can be a good enough one that it gets them by while the offense is really good? Absolutely. So yeah, Cleveland's a contender. Detroit's a contender. Boston's a contender if Jason Tatum is there and good. How about the Knicks? What are your thoughts on the Knicks?
Yeah, the Knicks, I don't know, because it's another team where they feel very Wolves adjacent, which is funny because, of course, they made the Cat Julius Randle trade, where there are some nights where I'm like, wow, the Knicks look amazing. And there are some nights I'm like, wow, the Knicks suck. They just can't play basketball. And like, leaving the NBA Cup, it was like that for like a couple of weeks. It's like, what are the Knicks doing? They can't do anything right. And then they went through that stretch, and now they're one of the hottest teams in basketball again. It's a very up and down team.
Yeah.
But again, because it's this Eastern Conference, I think the Knicks belong in that conversation. The question is, can they be effective enough defensively to maintain, to make it out of the Eastern Conference, to make it and even win an NBA Finals? That is a big time question mark with Brunson and Cat, your two best players, both being liabilities. I did like adding Jose Alvarado at the deadline. I think he's a difference maker. I don't know if he's enough to, push you like over the edge, like beyond some of these teams. Like the Cavs, of course, made a bigger move, a bigger swing. Celtics getting Tatum back would be a bigger addition than a Jose Alvarado. But the fact that they made it to the conference finals last year and they did go to 6 games against a Pacers team that is better than anybody in this Eastern Conference right now makes me feel like, I think the Knicks, even if it hasn't been always pretty this year and they've been really hot, really cold, if they get into the playoffs in one of those hot streaks, I think they can make it to the NBA Finals.
I think they might honestly be the wild card in the East. Not the truest, most extreme wild card, but like a wild card that actually has a chance of hitting. I gotta say this. I don't actually pay that close attention to all-star teams. Like there's a lot of people who really like make a lot of content out of the all-star selections. I didn't do that at all. I typically don't. Excuse me one sec. Why was Karl Anthony Towns an all-star? Give me one good reason for it. He is averaging less than 20 points per game, and he's a defensive liability. All the guy does is score, and he's not doing that well. Why the fuck is he an all-star?
He's a good rebounder. He's rebounding the hell out of the ball. Yeah, it's one of those things where it feels like everyone's kind of just like, Cat's going to be an all-star. But as we got towards it, I was kind of like,
why?
There were some injuries, so I think he would have been on as an injury replacement anyways. But it's not been a great year for Cat. And that is also one of the things with the Knicks where, like, say last year when we're in this Eastern Conference and Cat is putting up, like last year, had career best numbers. This season, It's like you said, less than 20 points per game, 46.6% from the field. That is the lowest mark of his entire career. 35.1% from three. That's the lowest mark since his rookie season. Defensively, he's not really doing much special at all. 3.5 fouls per game, which is pretty on brand for Cat. It's crazy for almost his entire career. He's averaged about 4 fouls a night. That is a concern because part of the reason you were able to sustain with that bad defense last year, although the defense was a little bit better last year than it's been so far this year,
I would even go as far as to say that Cat played good defense in the playoffs, at least against the Celtics.
Yeah, and Cat has been able to hold up in some playoff series. Like with Minnesota, they were able to hold up, and I think a lot of that, works if it's the double big thing with Mitchell Robinson, or if there are certain matchups where Cat can be successful. Slower type of bigs, like he actually had a decent bit of success against Nikola Jokic when the Wolves would play them in the playoffs because Jokic isn't, running around the perimeter. He's very slow and plodding, like more physical bigs. It's kind of the guys that Cat is a little bit more success against when it's one of those guys that has the ball in their hands. But in this Eastern Conference, that's not always going to be the case. Last year we saw Brunson and Cat targeted a lot by the Pacers, and that's really where things fell apart. The Celtics were really good at mismatch hunting in the regular season, but playoff-wise, they didn't do it as much, and they weren't as effective. The Pacers just ripped them to shreds at times. Like, they saw Jalen Brunson, and they just saw blood. And same thing with Karl Anthony Towns at times. They tried the double big thing. There was some success there, and, part of it was just Pacers, like, wizardry, like, insane things. Aaron Nesmith hitting 47 threes in the final 3 minutes of game one, but this is a team that is exploitable, but is also hyper talented. They might be the most talented team in the Eastern Conference, but at the same time, I just feel like, what am I going to get on a nightly basis? It feels like I'm shaking one of those like magic 8 balls, and it's going to be like, oh, the Knicks won by 40, or oh, Karl Anthony Towns fouled out, had 6 points, Brunson got exploited on defense, and they lost by 47 in game 3 of this series. Those are both possibilities on a nightly basis, and that worries me. They're so talented, and because they're in this Eastern Conference, again, it feels very Wolves adjacent. If you put the Wolves in this East, I'd feel better about them being a contender because they would be, in my opinion, probably the favorites to get to the NBA Finals, or at least very much in that conversation. And if you can get there, you can probably win the NBA Finals. You just need things to go your way. It might be unlikely. You might be at a huge disadvantage, but it's a possibility at the least. The Knicks can get there, and that makes me think they're a contender, but it's just, I don't know. I was like, I reached a point where I was out on the Knicks mid-season, and now I feel like I'm like kind of back, but not entirely. I don't know, man. I don't know with the Knicks.
Yeah, I'm also in a state of unclarity. I think Cat being this bad offensively is a real problem. I also think that Mitchell Robinson. I think if Mitchell Robinson could play even 25 minutes per game, would make all the difference. Like their data with him, I'm actually going to pull it up. They are so much better with him on the floor. And I'm pretty sure that even translates to both ends because his offensive rebounding is so damn good. Let me look. Yeah, they're 3.3 points better offensively. And actually, the defensive difference is not nearly as real as I expected it to be. It's only like 1 point, actually. So maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe these stats got worse than the last time I looked. Because I remember it being like
a lot of the stats got wonky with that like huge down stretch.
Yeah, because I remember him having like a +8 swing on defense. But yeah, Mitchell Robinson, I think, is a key to that defense being good enough. And the thing that I said about them firing Tom Thibodeau this last offseason was that Mike Brown would make the offense better to a degree that will make them overall a better team. And I do think it is very well possible that they can cobble together something similar to the defense last year. Now, how much Tom Thibodeau's like smoky ass chain smoker voice yelling at them from the sidelines determines the quality of their defense, I guess we'll have to see. The Knicks were not a great regular season defense last year either, and then defense is the reason that they made it to the conference finals. So like, it's very well possible to be kind of a mid-regular season defense and then put it together when it matters most, and I think they did that last year.
Yeah.
But that was also under the tutelage of one of the most, defensive-oriented coaches in NBA history. So That is a question mark to me. Cat is a question mark to me. I have no doubt Jalen Brunson will be awesome. Another factor is that their guard situation is a little cluttered because Deuce McBride's good, Tyler Kolek's pretty good, Jose Alvarado's pretty good. But I don't know how much you're going to manage to play all of those guys when you're also playing Jalen Brunson 38 minutes a game. So you just have a lot invested in these smaller guards, and it's like, how much can you play those guys next to Brunson?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with adding Alvarado. I would have loved if they could add one more front court guy to replace what Yabu was supposed to be for them. They weren't able to do it. It's just hard to make
I
moves
like
on
the
the fly at the
Alvarado
deadline when you're a
addition,
team
to
like
be
the
clear.
Knicks.
It's just like, I'm not sure how this rotation is going to shake up.
Yeah, and I mean there is always concerns like Alvarado is like really solid defensively for his size, but he is smaller. Like, you know, yeah, you can't play Brunson and Alvarado together. You do have Deuce McBride as well, who's been pretty good offensively this year, but defensively, it's not been one of his better seasons because they've asked a little bit more from him. I don't know. They do feel like a wild card more than they should have been. Like really with the Cavs not being as good as they were supposed to be this year, it should just feel like the Knicks Eastern Conference. Like that would have been, if you told me the Cavs were disappointing this year, I would have said, okay, then it's probably the Knicks. Yeah. And that was a very like popular and valid take. Like I had Cavs Knicks in the conference finals. I ultimately went with the Cleveland Cavaliers because I just felt a little bit better about them being well-rounded. Again, we talk about the Knicks defense, but I mean, I don't know at this point. The Knicks feel like they probably should be the favorites, but I definitely can't say I feel that way when I'm talking about it. Not that I feel like I don't feel great. Like, there is not one team where I'm like, yeah, they are for sure my favorite in the Eastern Conference right now. That is the weirdness of this
I'm
East.
for sure in the same camp. I do think it's just kind of like I'm going to have to see it in action. And like after the first round, we'll have a much better idea of what's going to happen from there. One other thing about the Knicks is that, and this is vaguely anecdotal, I'm not sure how much the stats would back it up, but in the Knicks games that I've watched with this core since the Bridges deal, seems like OG and Bridges just can very rarely have a good game at the same time. Like, you go check a box score and it's like, man, Bridges with 25 points, shot really efficiently, like 10 for 15. Hell yeah. What did OG do? 3 for 16 for 9 points. It's like, holy shit. Like, the Knicks, with both of those guys cooking, Cat being a 25 point per game guy and not a now under 20 point per game guy, and Brunson being one of the top 10 players in the NBA, like that team, if all cylinders are firing, should be a meat grinder to go through, but it just doesn't seem like they can get all of that together to work in, together. It's just, you'll get a little bit of all of those things that can go good for the Knicks, but it's never all going to happen at the same time. And the best teams can usually have games where everything's clicking. The Knicks very rarely have games where everything's clicking. There is always some major hurdle that they have to get over. So yeah, I do think I'd still have to put them in the category of contender, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if we got to the playoffs and I was like, yeah, no, they were not contenders. My bad on that one. But I'm going to choose to buy into the better version of this team than the worst version of this team. Now, the wild card, maybe they don't count as a wild card because I think a wild card needs to have a real chance of hitting, and you could argue they don't have a chance of hitting. But the 76ers, if you told me they went into the playoffs with a fully healthy Joel Embiid, things are very interesting. They suddenly get very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've fallen victim to the Sixers for years. I'm like a perennial, hey, Philly kind of guy. Like every single year. Yeah, my brother's a Sixers fan, so that probably plays into a little bit. But they got Paul George, and I was like, could this be where the Sixers make a conference finals run? And then everything completely fell apart. But Philly, I mean, they're interesting. Like, you talk about Embiid, he's averaging 26.6 per game this season so far, and especially as of late. I mean, 29, 37, 40, 24, 35, 33. He's looking like the Joel Embiid of old. Not as springy, not as elite defensively, and maybe that's one of the things that sinks them. But Embiid has looked like Joel Embiid. And for years, it's been like, if Embiid can stay healthy, who knows? It is a pretty open and, again, a very flawed Eastern Conference. If Embiid is himself and Maxey is doing the stuff he's done a lot of this season as that elite option, I don't know if he can be a consistent number one in a playoff run, because he's definitely far from being a perfect offensive player, lacks a little bit of that in-between game. I especially worry about the Sixers when it comes to clutch time, because they failed to execute a lot of times this season. But VJ Edgecombe has been really, really clutch this year. He's been awesome, and if he's ready for the moment, Paul George, honestly, I think the Paul George suspension might play to their benefit, because if you can just rest Paul George for 25 games and go into the playoffs and he's fresh, like, he's not been incredible this season, but he's been pretty solid, especially on defense. He's actually been so good defensively for them, even if the offense comes and goes. Like, this is a pretty talented team. It makes me mad they did nothing at the deadline. I guess they added, Thunder Bulls legend Cameron Payne, so that's pretty cool.
They traded
but
Jared McCain.
They didn't really. The thing that they did was give the Thunder Jared McCain, and they didn't make. They didn't make any additions, which makes me sad, because I do feel like this is a talented team that could make things interesting. We talk about a series between them and the Knicks. I think I'd pick the Knicks. Like, they're just more talented, but I think it'd be interesting. Like, I think there's a world where they make that a competitive series. And if they win that and they go into a matchup against the Celtics, if they don't have Jason Tatum, or Tatum doesn't look like himself, I don't know. There are a number of teams where I'm just like, could they make a conference finals run if things break their way? It feels like very open, where you could tell me a lot of different combinations of top teams and be like, yeah, those two are the ones that are in the conference finals. And I'm like, okay, well, if they got that matchup, then yeah, I could see that. But like you said, it's going to come down to Joel Embiid. Is he healthy? And it feels like any day that could just change.
For what it's worth, I think the approach that he and the Sixers have had this year has been as good of an approach as they possibly could have in terms of maintaining his health. He doesn't play back-to-backs. He doesn't play crazy minutes. And they also don't need him to be a playoff team in the same way that they did before. Like, they can win games without him. That is something that they can absolutely pull off. So, like, I do think they're a better team outside of just Joel Embiid than they have been in the past. But the other thing is they're lightening his load, not even offensively strictly, because he's averaging 30 points per game over his last 22 games. So he's playing 33 minutes, so like, he's still getting it in on that end of the floor. But defensively, you say he's worse. I don't know if he's worse so much as that he is just conserving his energy on that end in a way that he did not before. And when the playoffs come around, it's very plausible that he turns it up a gear on that end. I think a big thing that they've done that has been very nice to see in the regular season is the Dominic Barlow and Bona addition, because they've played those guys alongside Joel Embiid, and they take on more of the physicality, more of the defense and rim protection responsibilities. And like, it's not an ideal fit offensively, but it is a way to make sure that Joel Embiid is the closest thing to healthy that he can be entering the postseason. So on that front, I think a fully healthy Joel Embiid going into the playoffs is actually very plausible. Now, does that health maintain? Does he fucking get injured immediately in round one? I think that's also very likely. But I think the chances of him being fully healthy entering the playoffs, he's almost never done that. There has always been something lingering, and he's always had to play through something lingering while also having to carry the load offensively and defensively. And this team is better balanced. It has more talent, and they don't need him as much, while simultaneously they should have him more than they have in the past. Fully 100%, or at least far closer to it than he has ever been. So I do think I think they have a real chance, but this is like a Clippers team. They are the Clippers of the East, where there are so many logical reasons. There are so many on paper reasons that you can be like, I think this team could do it, but it never happens because it's the Sixers, and it's not allowed to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so bad for my brother because he chose to be a Sixers fan. He became a basketball fan after me, and it was the year that they got the number 1 pick, or they got number 3. They trade out for number 1 to get Markelle Fultz. He's like, oh, Philly's like one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're getting the number 1 overall pick. You know, they're on the East Coast where we live. I'll become a Sixers fan. And it's been nothing but heartbreak and devastation ever since. Well, I just saw the Thunder win a championship. So I tried to convince him to, you know, join my side, but he never wants to do that. Yeah, it's crazy how Embiid continues to, like, the fact that he's back like this. It feels surreal.
People were talking about him like he was dead last year. Like going into the offseason, it was like, dude, the Sixers need to salary dump Joel Embiid type.
Yeah, there was like mourning. There were like funerals for Embiid and his career. And right now, like, so far this season, plus 5.7 the Sixers are when, why did I say that like Yoda? Plus 5.7 when Joel Embiid is on the court. Not sure why I got in that bag. And then negative 1.6 when he's off. Like, they definitely still rely on Joel Embiid, but they're not getting annihilated in the minutes without him so far this season. And I'm going to double check the numbers. Yeah, when Max and Embiid are on, plus 7.9. Dominic Barlow's been really good. One of the better front court guys that they've had this season, or in the entirety of the Joel Embiid era. Like, he's actually really, really solid, good defensively, not an elite offensive player, but he can, you know, do some of the dirty work. It's definitely not a bad roster. It's pretty solid, but it might be one of those years where, like, okay, they've kind of built a foundation, and then next year they need to make moves, which is part of why I'm upset they didn't do anything this deadline, because how often are you going to get Joel Embiid playing like this? Like, you could be confident, okay, Embiid is back, but one injury, which pops up all the time for Joel Embiid, goes wrong, and suddenly all that comes crumbling down. I really hope we have a healthy Embiid run, at least one more, because I still do believe that he has that run in him where he's dominant the way that he's been a majority of his career, and they can get to a conference finals. I would love to see Philly make that run. We'll have to see, especially if they can overcome those clutch issues, because I feel like every single time they play one of the highest amounts of clutch games in the NBA, and every one of them is like pulling teeth out. I'm like, why are they doing what they're doing right now on like every possession?
So that is indeed a problem. But I do think if the Sixers made a conference finals run at the bare minimum, like, that's in the cards. I'm going to throw a crazy wild card out there, and this is one of those instances where I will be like, yeah, experience is the reason I'm going to say no here. But the Charlotte Hornets are so good late. They have been one of the best teams in the NBA for like 2 months now. And that is enough that I'm like, obviously, you look at their record, you look at their place in the standings, not that great. But I also think the team in the first couple of months of the season is a completely different team from this one.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte, it was about 2 months ago when a really tough day happened where the Hornets annihilated the Thunder in Oklahoma City. And everybody was like, oh my God, what's wrong with the Thunder? They're falling apart. What was the reality was that we were witnessing the birth of a super team in the Charlotte Hornets, and nobody wanted to admit that at the moment. It's the same way, again, I talk about my brother being a Sixers fan. The first game of Bubble TJ Warren was against Philly, and I was watching with him. He's so pissed. He's like, why is Bubble, like, TJ Warren going off for 50 points? Turns out he was becoming the best player of all time, is what he didn't realize. But since that game, they won that game. And going into that one, or even, you know, the game before, they beat the Chicago Bulls, and before that game, they were 11-23. They were 11-23 at one point. They're now 26-29. Like, they have gone 15-3 over their last 18 games, which is unbelievable. And again, it's not like it's just one hot stretch. It's been 2 months that they have been this caliber of team. When they have had Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, like Moussa Diabate, like that starting group, I think they've only got like a couple losses on the season. Like, when that group is out there, they are so good. And they're a team that gets threes up a ton, and they make a lot of them. They've got really capable shooters. LaMelo's a great playmaker. Brandon Miller's coming into his own. Con Knipple's having one of the best rookie seasons we've seen in a minute. It's crazy that anybody's even slightly keeping pace with what Cooper Flagg has done this season. It's crazy. And I believed in the Hornets, like, coming into the season. I thought about putting them as a play-in team because I'm like, hey, maybe this thing kind of works. But ultimately, I was just like, I don't know. Nothing ever goes right for the Charlotte Hornets. Like, they are perennially, maybe they could take the jump, but they never really do. but they're flying up the standings right now, man. I mean, they're a game and a half or 2.5 games back of the 8-seeded Heat. They're only 3 games back of the Magic, who's just announced today. Franz Wagner is going to be reevaluated in like 3-4 weeks with his high ankle sprain, so he's not coming back anytime soon. They're only 4.5 back of Philly, who has been pretty good this season, but they're always, prone to some losses. And without Paul George, they've been a little bit worse. Like, could the Hornets get to a 6 seed? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. It feels they feel super Indiana Pacers. I don't think they're going to go on the run the Pacers did. They're not going to get as high up in the standings as the Pacers did. But last year, we're talking about the Pacers, and we're like, this team is supposed to be better than this. What is happening? They're just not very good. And then it's like, they're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be a good basketball team, and they just turn it up. The Hornets, no one knew they were supposed to be a good basketball team, but they decided they were going to be, and now they just can't lose.
Defense ain't good enough. I'm not going to say they're contenders, but that offense is crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that LaMelo still doesn't hit a high enough percentage of them, I think, to justify some of the wild ass shots that he takes. But him, Brandon Miller, and Con Knipple is one of the most talented 3-point shooting trios like ever. Like, at least in this stretch they have been. Yes. Con is one of the best shooters in the NBA. Brandon Miller during this stretch has been awesome. I'm actually not sure what he's shooting on the season.
It should be, I'm pretty sure it's up to high 30s at this point. 36.6. It's not quite as high as I thought it was. I thought it was more like 37, 38.
Since this turn here.
While you do that, I want to bring up real quick the lineup of LaMelo, Con, Miller, Bridges, Diabate, the one that they've been, starting. Like, that is one of their most used lineups. 215 minutes, not the craziest sample size in the world, but offensive rating of 138.1, net rating of 22.9. Now, I will say, they're shooting 46.6% from 3 in those minutes. That is something that could absolutely come back down to earth and sink that lineup almost entirely. At the same time, but the fact
they're really good at shooting the ball in a way that I think is sustainable. Not quite 46%, but if you told me they could shoot 42% in a playoff series with that core, sure.
I mean, even just with their big 3 of LaMelo, Con, and Brandon Miller, when that trio's out there, plus 9.3, like that, like that trio. There are a lot of teams in the NBA where they've got these talented, like, twos or, trios. I don't know why I said twos. It's called a duo. That's the word for it. But they've got like these talented groups of players, but the on-off numbers kind of indicate that, like, oh, maybe one guy's better without the other one. Nah, when these 3 guys are on the court, like, they all just elevate each other. And then they had Kobe White, who, he's injured right now. We'll see when he comes back. But that's another guy who can put up threes at a really high volume. He will let it fly and hit a lot of them. They're might be the single most explosive offense in the NBA. Like, if they just get it going, there's just nothing you can do. Again, that game against the Thunder, LaMelo, there was a ball that just like kind of flew out of, I think it was Miles Bridges' hands and just landed in LaMelo's hands in the corner. And without jumping, just went up on his tiptoes and shot from behind the basket and floated up and in. And it's like, okay, that's just what LaMelo does. This team, if you just get them on a bad night, there's literally nothing you can do. You just feel helpless.
Yeah. To put into perspective what you just said with those 3, that 3-man lineup being plus 9, the second best net rating in the NBA by a team is plus 8.
Yeah. Like,
they're a crazy good team with those 3 on the floor in a way that I'm like, I'm just not going to be like, yeah, man, I'm banking on LaMelo in his first playoff series ever. But I'm confident in Con. Brandon Miller has had a lot of inconsistency to this point in his career with how he has shot the ball, so he's also someone I'm a little shaky on. But they could also use some size on the wings that they don't have. But as I mentioned about Brandon Miller shooting earlier, since that OKC game where he went 7 for 10 from 3, he is shooting 39.5% on 8 attempts per game.
Which is just absurd.
Yeah, and then you have Con shooting like 43% on 8 attempts. Now I just have to know what LaMelo is shooting in this stretch as well.
I mean, you can see that Charles Lee is from like the Joe Mazzulla like coaching tree. You can see that philosophy there, with like high volume 3-point attempts and like some volatility, but like insane offensive explosions.
LaMelo shooting 36% on 10 threes a game. So those 3 combined are shooting 26 threes a game at like 38-ish%. Just those 3.
It's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Like
And they add Kobe White, who is a guy who has averaged like 7 or 8 3-point attempts like his last 3 seasons.
I believe I saw a stat that by adding Kobe White, they now have like 4 of the top 25 like 3-point rate guys in the NBA. Of course, with that big 3 and then adding Kobe White to the equation, which I mean, we talk about something that can just kind of take you over the hump and pull off an upset in a series. You get hot shooting from 3, especially on that volume. If you get them up like that, and there's guys that are competent enough to knock down those looks, like there was a world where they could upset someone in the first round if they like
could
get
make
up to
things interesting at the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think they would have to get up to like a 6 seed and get the right matchup with whoever ends up at 3. But I mean, if they just get hot, there might be nothing you can do in a matchup.
If they beat the Celtics without Tatum, or Tatum's just bad, wouldn't shock me. Like, it would not be mind-blowing to me if that happened.
Which is crazy. We're talking about the Charlotte Hornets.
Right. It feels sacrilegious.
Like a lot of the it does feel sacrilegious to talk about the Hornets winning a playoff series, being even in like Hornets and playoffs are not something that ever goes together.
Yeah.
They made it like once with Kemba Walker, and that was years. But it's, we even talk about some of these numbers. They didn't play a lot together at the beginning of the season. That's part of why they were bad. But a lot of these numbers are also impacted by the beginning of the season when they were just not a good basketball team. So the fact that they're like this high at this point is a testament to how good they are. I'm pretty sure they had like one of the single best point differential months ever in January. Which it's the Charlotte Hornets. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It feels so weird that they're in this video at all, but like they're not contenders, but man, they could be a good playoff team, and I just didn't anticipate that at all. And I do think if they ended up knocking off one of these teams that we consider a contender, I also think that's possible. I just imagine it would require some really hot shooting that would then come back down to earth in a like second or third round.
Yeah.
So like I don't think they have enough to sustain a full run, but they have enough to win a series and to at the very least make whatever series they're in really compelling. I have liked the idea a lot of seeing a Pistons Hornets first round. That would be very fun. Obviously with some beef brewing there as well. I feel like we have to mention them, even though I'm quite confident they don't got it. The Raptors and the Magic, I just think there's too many rough edges on that offense. They're solid teams, but I just don't think they got the makings of great ones, at least not right now.
Yeah, I mean, Raptors, 3-point shooting's not really there, and I don't trust Scotty or Ingram to be a one option in a real playoff run. I think this is a year where like maybe they could win a series, but I think it's hard with that offense. I think it's just going to be brutal at times for them. But this is a year where they're going to just kind of see how it goes. And then the offseason, you probably try and trade RJ Barrett. You make some type of upgrade. They feel so due for a consolidation trade of some kind. And then, yeah, with the Magic, I mean, Franz is hurt now. Paolo, it's so funny. The second we get to the All-Star break, like there's no basketball and people writing dissertations on the timeline about Paolo Banchero and about how he's just not been that good this season. And how is he ever going to be capable of being a one option? And I don't know if he is going to be at this point. I mean, he's inefficient, one of the worst jump shooters in the entire NBA, doesn't really bully guys like that, is not that great defensively. The Magic are a team I could talk about for so long. I won't because this is going long, but they're in such a bad spot, I guess I would say, weird spot, maybe more so, where I don't really know if Paolo or Franz can be the top guy in the championship team. I don't even know if they fit together, and they can't stay on the court, and they just gave up a bunch of picks for Desmond Bane, who was supposed to be the connector to kind of take them over the top and make them a top seed in the Eastern Conference. And yeah, injuries do play a factor, but at the same time, it's now more of a feature than a bug with this roster. And even when they've been healthy, like Paolo and Franz have just not worked on the court together. So they're in a very weird spot. Like there was a lot going on with the Magic that is super, super interesting. But yeah, I agree. Those teams are both pretenders. So are your contenders in the East just the top 4 there? Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs?
Yeah, but with asterisks next to Knicks and Celtics.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at for the most part too. I think I'll probably take the asterisk out on the Knicks just because, again, they made the conference finals with a better East last year, but there are such valid concerns with them that I like completely understand.
The thing is, they made that run because they turned up the dial on defense. I don't know if Mike Brown will be able to get them to do that in the same way.
Yeah, that's fair. And it does feel like, the cat thing, the fact that he's not playing that well. I mean, maybe you end up in a world where it's like Knicks versus Cavs in the first round or even a second round series. Like,
Hmm.
I would worry about the Knicks in that matchup for sure. I think I'd probably take Cleveland at this point. Um, yeah, I mean, very valid concerns with New York, which I'm sure the Knicks fans listening
Um,
to this are not going to love, but
I don't know. What I find interesting about Knicks fans is they'll give you shit for criticizing their team, and then you go and look at like their Twitter profile, and it's nothing but like "fuck this team sucks." I'm just like, what?
yeah,
Why can't I say that too?
that's one of my favorite things. I will say stuff that like most fans just agree with me. YouTube comments is one of the most interesting places in the world because I feel like on Twitter a lot of the sentiments are very similar about teams. There are going to be people who disagree and have different opinions, but I feel like if you say something negative about someone's team, for the most part, if the negative thing just seems objectively true, people just agree with you. If you say it on YouTube, someone will say something that just makes absolutely no sense and is just so off the wall where it's like, where did this possibly come from? I did a video earlier today where I did one question for every NBA team going into the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And for the Suns, I was like, can this offense work in the playoffs? And I said, I don't think any fan of the Suns or anybody in general really expects the Suns to make a run. And I woke up to a comment this morning that's like, I love your videos, but I completely disagree with you. I firmly believe the Suns are going to make a deep playoff run. I'm like, man, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
I mean, hey, at least
I love
it's
what the Suns have
respectful.
done. Yeah,
You can do. I disagree
that's
with me
true.
all fucking day. There are just people who will be like, "Wow, you should die." I think because you don't believe in the Orlando Magic.
I'm pretty sure, but Magic fans will like go to war for their
Mhm.
guys. I'm pretty sure when I made the video, it was like the Magic of a Palo problem. There were people in the comments that are like, "I'm going to leak your address on Twitter because you don't like Paolo Banchero's game right now." It was
No,
crazy. Like, they will ride
it's
for
just
that
in
team.
general crazy the energy that people bring to basketball, which is just not that important at the end of the day. But we don't need to dwell on that too much. Yeah. So just to run through real quick. For me, my list, OKC, Spurs, and Denver are the top are in my A tier contenders. And then Minnesota, Detroit, and Cleveland are definitely in my B tier, with the Celtics and Knicks, and hell, I'll even say the Charlotte Hornets having the capacity to potentially be entering that B tier for me eventually.
Yeah. So for me, firm contenders: Thunder, Spurs, Nuggets. No, I think Thunder and Nuggets are kind of in the top tier
Yeah.
contenders to me. The Spurs then are there in that next spot, I think, alongside the pretty much everybody in the East, like the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavaliers. I think are also all kind of in that group there, with San Antonio, partially because San Antonio gets the Western Conference tax, where it's like you've got to go through
Mhm.
at least one, if not both, of the Thunder and the Nuggets to even get there in the first place. And then wild cards include like maybe Philly, maybe Minnesota if everything goes their ways. And yeah, maybe the Hornets are actually just the super team, the greatest team of all time that we're not ready for yet, and they are the team that goes ahead and wins the championship.
Dude, would
Who
that not
knows?
be the funniest? Obviously, I know you have your own personal stake, but like, just imagine we fast forward to like September, and we're like, can the Charlotte Hornets repeat as champion?
It is objectively the funniest outcome that could
Yeah.
happen. Like the Thunder getting back and like having the chance to go back to back, but getting like annihilated by the Charlotte Hornets, and it's LaMelo hitting like Harlem Globetrotter trick shots from half court
Doing TikTok
is objectively
dances
the funniest
after.
thing that happened. Hey, that's our. Do not take that away from us.
They
That's the
can
one thing
out
they can't have.
TikTok
We are the
dance,
TikTok
y'all.
team. We added Jerry McCain. They can't.
Yeah,
do it.
that's
they
true.
Can't out TikTok
You did solidify your spot at the top of the TikTok power rankings.
Exactly, bro. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Chill out. Don't take that from us. That's our thing.
Yeah, well, that's the pod. Like I mentioned in the intro, we are going to be going over the KD files over on the Patreon, so go check that out. That will be the top link in the description. It is just $1 a month. Hell, if you just want to hear our thoughts on that one, pop in $1, immediately cancel the subscription, by all means. Or you could not, because I wouldn't spend money on listening to two doofuses talk about basketball personally, but I appreciate it if you do nonetheless.